there, viewers! Sun Service here, back with more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts as the Japanese. Now, Sagami and the Dutchman don't get a break, it seems, because the battleship Pack has found them. And then I think the cruisers there are surviving cruisers from... the enemy cruisers there, at least. They're surviving from the previous battle. Oh, one of the dogs are taking care of it. It was joined us. Joined off camera, at least. Right. And then we have a picture of my favourite battlecruiser class, the Renown class. Right. Yes, the Renowns they are my favourite battlecruisers. All 7 of you together are going to follow behind there. The 9 of you are going to come together and... So the last episode, when we had multiple instances of... What is it called? Do you know the type of victory that is a victory for you in one, but it actually costs you more in the end than you actually gained? Whatever that type of victory is called is what we had. Right, some of these were in the last battle, armoured cruiser-wise at least. Some of these are new, as in like were only just brought in for this battle here. Pack has a bit of a history of surviving the torpedo attacks of death, so let's see if her luck will hold out again. You get your other torpedo off? Right, you dud it out. Fire, 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 fire! Good, you fired both. You fired both. The Pack isn't getting out of this one this time. Yeah, if any of you do still have torpedoes and in range, do fire. I just have to remember for these guys, you know, detach all. Have everyone go separately, so then the ones that are further back and have yet to take damage can actually then, in theory, quickly run and not take damage. Or sink, preferably. Remember, armor piercing only. If any of you have secondary guns, because of how low of a caliber it is, high explosive for secondaries. Right, we're improving our accuracy. Sagami only has 12 armor piercing shells left because we haven't been able to go in and properly rearm her just yet. So it seems like the other torpedo boats are all most likely going to get out. And it wasn't the one we were aiming for, but one of them sunk now. Of the armored cruisers, that is. We only have 2 more armor piercing shells with Sagami. So that's it now. Sagami's mains are now HE only. Let's pull up speed. Pull up speed and make turns to... We don't really need to make more turns to avoid torpedoes. That's good. Hello there. I'm not going to get the ships killed. Well, I did get a few of the torpedo boats killed, but the big ships aren't going to get killed. This ain't going to be like last episode, where we lost a battleship, I think. Was it a battleship or was it 2? I think we lost 2 battleships, didn't we? Yeah, we lost Yamashiro and then we lost one of the old original ones. Although we did gain a battleship with Mr. Dutchman here, who I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the actual name of, but he shall be referred to as the Dutchman. Okay, so the Dutchman's secondaries have run out of AP, so... How are the armoured cruisers on AP? The armored cruisers still have their AP, which is good. That's at least something helpful. But no AP is definitely making me want to turn and run. So yeah, we're going to depart, and going through our departure procedures, I'm going to have the light cruisers and the armored cruisers separate from the battleships. And I'm going to have the two battleships separate from each other so Sagami can go to a top speed. But yeah, we are departing. Protected cruisers, run your smoke screens. Oi! Right. It was still net. Hey, we're gaining 3! We're gaining 3 new builds! Last checked. So technically we're going to be at a net gain of 1. Although technically not as well, because those 3 battleships were being built before we took the losses, so yeah, technically we are at a net loss of 1. But the Chinese are at a net loss of 4, so, well, it's now 4 that they're at a net loss of, so it's fine. Oh, it's only 2 we have building, so Sagami just was in a fight. Right, I'm having Sagami run away from this one. I didn't think I'd be needing to cue the music so early. If I did, I wouldn't have gotten off that off the open tab for it. Right, cueing the music. It's a little early, but there we go. If you're talking about the Alaskas, yes. Because I know you had the Lexingtons, they never came out as battle cruisers. So you had the Alaskas, although then they were never actually classed as battle cruisers. Yeah, it just so also happened to be the most intact of the enemy cruisers. from that last battle. Yeah, Oi and Sagami, you are both running. Because Sagami's already used her... So this is supposed to be quote-unquote a continuation of that last fight. Yet this more looks like, from the ammo situation anyway, like from the massive fight in the last episode, end of last episode. But this is more a, we just did that massive fight that we won, and now Sagami encountered two ships that should have already gone in for repairs on that last... Yes, I mentioned the Lexingtons. So to my knowledge, you Americans, in terms of actually going into further than on paper, had two battlecruiser classes. The Lexingtons never got completed as battlecruisers, but they were battlecruisers when they were laid down, so still counts. And the Alaskas. You do have paper design battlecruisers. I know that for a fact, because, hell, a couple of them ended up in World of Warships. But in terms of oh yeah, they ended up going into service and whatnot. You only, like, to laying down and service, you only had two that got to laying down and one that actually went into service as a battlecruiser. And does it surprise you, as we the British, the masters of the battlecruisers, we actually had some historical incomplete designs that never saw the light of day. Like Fisher, for example, wanted I think it was, yeah, he definitely wanted Incomparable, which Incomparable would have been a 20-inch armed battlecruiser. But Incomparable's like the famous one, and then there's he wanted a follow-on as well to the Splendid Cats, so like Lion, Tiger, ships like that, which never came to fruition as well. And then you have other famous examples, like I think it's N3 was the, or I think it might have been actually G3 that was the battlecruiser. But you had that. That's like the famous example. You have the F battlecruiser program, which was considered before before we ended up using what became Nelson. Okay, the Yakimos are out, so I'm gonna send the two Yakimos up that way. Shikaku's repairing. It's another Yakimo. And then, sort of, by the time we were going back to properly designing capital ships of our own, like post-Washington and stuff, none of them were actually done as battlecruisers, because battlecruisers by that point were pretty much useless with the advent of the fast battleship. But yeah, it's interesting when you see that even we British, the nation who made the most of the battle cruisers and even stuck with the battle cruiser after we lost 3 of them at once to explosions in the same battle. Yeah, we had cancelled designs, and also in the end as well, we had cancelled other members of classes we actually did get it. Well, of designs we actually did get into the water. Yes, I'm looking at you. Oh, hold on a second. That way is east. So I have to look somewhat northwesternly to roughly where the Denmark Strait is. Yes, I'm looking at you, Hood. Right. Because Hood was supposed to have other sister ships, but they never got completed, and then Washington happened. And I do know the names Nelson and Rodney were, if I remember correctly, supposed to be used for Hood's sister ships. If I'm remembering this correctly. I'm using Hood as an example of a ship that was supposed to be of an entire class, but only had one ship built because, well, the entire class got cancelled, bar the lead ship, Hood. Hold on a second, let me look up, So, the Admiral class was supposed to be of 4 ships, which the 4 ships were supposed to be Hood, Anson, Howe, and Rodney. So, Rodney's name was supposed to be used for the Admirals, but not Nelson like I thought. And then, yeah, Hood obviously then ended up at Denmark Strait. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be so mean to Hood myself because I quite like Hood. Like, I'm someone who quite likes battle cruisers, and Hood is like... Hood is, for all intents and purposes, like the very top, the best of the best that any battle cruiser got to, because of the fact that she's a battle cruiser that a lot of people debate today that she could actually be considered a fast battleship, although I don't actually class her as a fast battleship just because a lot of elements of her design are the more battlecruisery side of things. And so it's really not overall for me that I don't really see it, Hood being a fast battleship, because yeah, the only thing yeah, technically there is the argument, and the argument has been used a lot. I know that Hood had the 8 15-inch guns, which, for all intents and purposes, all of the fast battleships had either nine or eight. All of the fast battleships had 9 or 8 guns of 15 to 16-inch. I need to quickly remind myself what Ersas York is. Because I know the Mackinsons, they're the 13.8-inch armed ships that never really saw service. Well, never saw service, sorry. That was supposed to be Derflinger. So, Ersas York. I'm just reminding myself of the design. 8-gun, 15-inch design. So, Ersatz York, for all intents and purposes, with what I'm seeing here, with its predicted design, it's a Renown that has sacrificed a bit of speed for more armour and an extra main gun turret. That's very, very much nutshelling it, but like, I know there is more to Ersatz York than just being a slightly up-armoured, extra turreted Renown, because overall, for very similar tonnage, actually, no, not very similar tonnage, Renown is actually lighter. Renown is 27,000-ish. And Ursax was supposed to be 33 to 38,000. So, okay, I give that Ursats is heavier. Oh, was I? I've just been stuck in this screen for a moment. Alright, let's move on ahead. But, yeah, Ursats is heavier and slower than Renown. As I said, extra turret, definitely more armoured. Okay, so there's the 3 cruisers that we need to go and end the existence of. And Sagami's only still has 35 armor piercing. Yeah, this is bad for Sagami. I honestly say Ursat's York would have been an interesting design if she had actually been completed. I'd also say the Mackinsons would have been an interesting design as well. Like, but again, it's designs that unfortunately we'll never really know how effective they would have been in real life. Like, yes, you could do all the doing a ship to a very similar design in games like this or World of Warships and stuff, but you would never really truly know their capabilities. Any other battle cruisers save Congo? In terms of actual entry to service, I believe no. But they did have other battlecruiser designs. Because they had Congo. They had Congo. They had the Tascuba class cruisers that, oh, yeah, Tascuba and Ibuki that got, re-rated to battlecruisers, but they were never really battlecruisers. But yeah, Japan had the Congos, and then they did have the Amagis, but then they got cancelled. One was supposed to become a aircraft carrier, but then it got a teeny tiny bit destroyed in an earthquake. And so then another Amagi was then turned to a carrier that was a Kagi. Like, Amagi itself was supposed to become a carrier. She got destroyed in an earthquake, so Amagi was used instead. And then their last battlecruiser design was the B-65 design. Like, the Amagis ended up being like Lexington was for you Americans. Or like the Amagis that went into service, I should add. Look. Like, the Amagis are like the Lexingtons. They were originally supposed to be battle cruisers, but then got turned into aircraft carriers. And no, I just remembered it. I actually was a bit wrong with my history of Japanese carriers there. It was originally Amagi and Akagi that were being converted. Amagi got destroyed in the earthquake. Kagi survived the earthquake, and they used the battleship. They used what was it? So yeah, they had a Kagi go in. And it was Kaga. Yeah, Kaga was then taken up. Yes, Shinano was turned into a aircraft depot ship sort of thing. Like, Shinano, if she was given more time, she probably would have become an actual carrier, but um, she just didn't really have the time. The Japanese didn't really have the time to go through and make her a proper carrier, if you get my meaning. Like, Shinano was a rush job because Japan was in a pretty bad state by the time that they decided to convert Shinano into a carrier. And it only got worse during the construction because it ended up being that Shinano had massive flaws in her design that actually ended up accelerating the sinking of the ship in the end. Because Shinano sank to only 3 torpedoes, if you remember the story correctly. Sunk by 3 torpedoes from an American submarine. And then... But, yeah, with Shinano, though, she was never... If Shinano was properly converted, like, if let's say it's very early in her design, like, in her construction period, as it was, but the Yamatos were properly started, let's say, a year or 2 earlier, and so, let's say the Japanese think, oh, we want to turn Shinano into a carrier, and they actually had the time to do the proper design and convert her and stuff, then yes, I think she would have been a really good carrier. Like, in the state she ended up being in when she sailed on her voyage, I wouldn't consider her a super carrier at all. Like, because effectively she was a ship that aircraft carriers would only send their aircraft to go get repaired and then send back out. Like an aircraft depot ship, like I mentioned. But if the time was properly taken, if she had gone through a conversion, I would have definitely agree with the statement that she was the first super carrier. But only if Japan had more time with her to actually properly convert her. She would have been the first super carrier. In my opinion. Because, yeah, Shinano's size in general would make her, in terms of tonnage, if she got completed as a carrier, a super carrier just by tonnage, regardless, but in terms of actual capability as well, yeah, I would see Shinano if she actually got properly completed as a proper carrier. But as Shinano never got truly completed as a carrier, we're never actually going to truly know if she could have been an effective design. Like, yes. especially with how much of a rush job the actual conversion was, because again as well, if they had more time, they would have taken away the more battleshipy parts of the hull, like the thicker parts of armor and steel used, and stuff like that. Like, they would have also been able to sort out the internals a little more, to make it a little more better for carrier use. Like, it's still not going to be an entirely perfect carrier, don't get me wrong. Like, you're still trying to build a massive carrier out of the largest battleship ever built. But I honestly think for a conversion, she would have been a very great carrier. Although I only rate her in terms of the Axis carrier plans and how effective all of them would be, I actually rate Shinano second in terms of carriers. I think if they had been completed would have had the best sort of service life with them. Charlie! Shut up! Because if Aquila, in my opinion, if Aquila got completed, Aquila was the Italian carrier conversion, then I probably think that would have been the best overall Axis carrier. Like, yes, Aquila is a conversion from an ocean liner. Yes, she is going to have some inefficiencies because it's not a carrier designed from the keel up. But Aquila overall, she sort of has the best mix of capability from all the Axis carrier plans that were made. Like, she had relatively decent speed, relatively decent air wing for a World War II carrier, especially decent for a conversion from an ocean liner as well. I probably think as well, if the Italians had Aquila, they may have been a little more confident in some of their operations, just because for at least they'd have better scouting availability for one. But then two, secondarily, I think they may have a little more use to the Allies after the armistice and Italian swapping sides and stuff, because if the Italians have a carrier, then yes, while it may not be exactly great for the role, you can put those carriers, like put Aquila, for example, on the Atlantic convoy routes as an escort ship, and then you freed up Oh, I do play Silent Hunter, just only for fun though, because I'm not Wolfpack. I can't really make Silent Hunter really interesting. Like, I'm not like Wolfpack or Taff and YouTubers like that. here's the thing though, while I do think that yes, Aquila would have probably have been a great carrier and all, there is the thing of would she actually be worth it, because thinking about it honestly, the Italians are in a placement that they can cover all their territorial needs with just land aircraft. So I probably think that if Aquila got completed, she would probably be more of a prestige status prestige trophy to the Italians than an actual effective warship. I could maybe see about doing that again at some point. Like, I think maybe yes as well, because Aquila being off like the Malta sort of area, the Italians then have theoretically 24/7 aircraft coverage over the area. Theoretically, that's if they want to like risk carrier night operations and stuff, which back in those days was very dangerous. It's still a dangerous thing these days, if I remember correctly. Just those days it was even more dangerous. But then also as well, having Aquila there, Aquila could in theory be equipped to an all-fighter only configuration, and then the aircraft that were being ferried over from the aircraft carriers, that like Ranger, the Implacables and stuff like that. No, it's not the Implacables, it's the Illustriouses, sorry. They could essentially be shot down en route very, very quickly, instead of like having to know they've launched them, then getting aircraft from land bases, which are further away than it would be if you had like Aquila conveniently placed on their flight plans. Illustrious was so armoured because, and this is going off of stuff I've heard Drac mention and a couple of the books I got here, but the Illustriouses were given so much armour because the Illustriouses were built specifically for the Mediterranean in mind. And that is because the British were definitely thinking that a war was going to somehow go into the Mediterranean, because you had Mussolini and Mustache Man were all buddy friendly with each other, and so we were somewhat thinking what a war in the Mediterranean would be like, and with the carriers we correctly thought that it's going to be a lot of airstrikes, and that we're going to have to be defending ourselves from the air threats, but also as well then that some of said air threats are actually going to get through regardless of how much anti-aircraft stuff that goes on. So yeah, possibility of getting hit all the time. We decided to armour our flight decks and our hangars and stuff, so we could still still conduct flight operations, in theory, after being bombed. That's why they're armoured. And that theory did prove to be correct. It was especially so in the Pacific, more likely, more knowingly in service, because it wasn't just American carriers that got hit with kamikazes. Oh no. No, some of our carriers got hit as well. And with the American carriers, they got hit by the kamikazes. The kamikazes went through the flight decks into the hangars, usually exploding in the hangars and causing small hangar fires and almost sinking the ships in Bunker Hill's case. Well, it was Bunker Hill and one other that had it. And then some of our carriers, that's what I didn't say. And then some of our carriers got hit as well by kamikazes. The kamikazes couldn't actually get through the armoured flight decks, and so they would explode on the actual deck itself and then just either slide off or be enough easy wreckage for the crews to just sweep them off the decks and then your flight operations again. Whereas American carriers, you have to fix your hangars, plank over the flight deck again so you can actually go and fly again. And then you have the thing of your ship could actually get very badly crippled like Bunker Hill did. Second, USS... So yeah, USS Bunker Hill CV-17. She got struck by 2 kamikazes. And several explosions happened on a hangar and stuff, and it eventually killed 396 men. 43 went missing and were never found. That's of the 396. Wounded 264. And, oh, funny thing is, it actually made Enterprise the flagship of the formation that Bunker Hill was the flagship of. Franklin, that's the other one. It was Bunker Hill and Franklin that, I'm going to say that you can't really compare Illustrious and Essex all too well, because, Illustrious is definitely better than the original Lexington class. And the second Lexington was an Essex class, so I'm gonna presume you're going off the Essex class Lexington, but because yes, well, they're comparable carriers at the same time period and whatnot. The Illustriouses were made as armoured carriers, whereas our old friend the Essex class, was made specifically as an unarmoured carrier to fit as many aircraft as you can on her, sort of ship. So a more easier comparison would be Midway and the Illustriouses, because Midway, she was built as an armoured carrier. Midway's an armoured carrier. Like, she's armoured carrier, still of the relative comparable era, like World War II era, and I would have to say Midway. Midway's the better ship. Okay, so USS Franklin, the other ship I had mentioned, I'm going to take Pengu. They didn't give me Pengu. Oh well. So USS Franklin, I think she also went through a very similar kamikaze attack as Franklin did. Let me go double check. No! Franklin actually only got 2 bomb hits from a Japanese dive bomber. The bomber didn't crash into her or anything, I don't think. And Franklin became the most heavily damaged aircraft carrier to survive the war. And also, during the entire war, she suffered 924 killed in action, which is the second deadliest warship of the Americans of World War II. Or Kitty Hawk or Enterprise. It had to be Kitty Hawk / Enterprise CVN, whatever her pennant number was. Because the Kitty Hawks could do a lot more than Queen Elizabeth can when they were in service. And then Enterprise as well, she's a nuclear carrier, which sort of makes it somewhat better because you don't really have to go and refuel for a long time, sort of thing. Oh yeah, we're still... I've just realised we are still at war. Well, I'm going to finish repairs first off, because that's a thing that needs to be done. Then I'm going to start start bringing the pain to France. Pain to France. We do still have the Austro-Hungarians and the Byzantines to worry about. Yeah, that is going to be a nightmare to solve. I guess I could sort that out later. But what I'm also going to sort out is an 11-month dockyard building program because, yes, we kind of do need to increase our dock size a bit more. So we're going to have the new battleships come out in turn after this, I think. Or, yeah, I think it's turn after this. Right. 65. Damn it, they should have waited another carrier before using the Enterprise name again. CV6 and then CV66. CVN 66. That would have been like... Like, it would have been great if yeah, they specifically had Enterprise skip to CV66 and then just sort of have a thing that the Enterprises have now got to end in 6 in their hull number. Okay, main fleet is ready to go. Ready to go for another round. So, yep, out to 4 Bay R with you. Right, we got, yeah, 2 more turns, I think it is. And then I'm going to do another new battleship class. If I'm being honest, I don't think anytime feasibly soon would we here in the UK get a carrier that is any larger or in absolute similar capability to the American carriers. That is just my opinion. Because better than comparable American counterparts. I would have to say... I'd have to say... Our first lot of carriers, like Argus, Furious... Hold on a second, I need to remind myself of which were like our early lot. I know like Argus was one of them. HMS ARG. Hold on a second. List of British list of aircraft carriers of the Royal Navy. So yeah, Argus was our first proper carrier. Like, I would say Argus would be the best one comparable to your guys' designs. Because Argus was our first carrier. It was a conversion from a merchant ship. And overall, I think she ended up being overall better than, what's her name? Langley. So, comparable to Langley, Argus is better. Then we had Hermes. Hermes was our first purpose-built carrier. No, your conversion was from a collier. Argus was from an ocean liner. Then, in terms of first purpose-built carriers, we had Hermes. You had Ranger. Hold on a second. R-A-N-G-R. If I'm remembering correctly, Ranger was your first purpose-built carrier. I'm going off of first purpose-built here, yes, I know the Lexingtons were before, but for purpose-built, Ranger's your first purpose-built. As built, yeah. It's your aircraft. Fuck! Yeah, Ranger's your first purpose-built, but no. Ranger's better than Hermes. Hell, Ranger's even better than Eagle. Ranger's better than any of the Furiouses. In terms of aircraft capacity, it's better than Ark Royal. And Ark Royal, I would say, is probably like our best comparison to like the, oh god, Yorktown class. That's what Enterprise is like. And Ranger could fit more aircraft than Ark Royal. Unicorn doesn't matter because Unicorn is kind of like what Shinano was, an aircraft maintenance ship. Yeah, then you had the Illustriouses. Yeah. Even our Implacables weren't as good as Ranger. Then you had the Colossus class. Yeah, still not as good. Wait, no, they're armoured carriers, sorry. Then you had the Majestics. And then the Audaciouses. The Audaciouses, apparently 60 plus and 50 aircraft, so technically comparable, I guess. Oh, France isn't doing anything. Okay, next turn. Then we had the Centaurs, which were light carriers, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the Centaurs were light carriers, but they could carry like 42 aircraft. And, well, one of the Centaur class carriers has a tiny bit of a long life in its hands. I think the second aircraft carrier, Hermes, was a Centaur class. She was laid down in 1944, launched in 1953, then went through a whole bunch of modifications and stuff that ended up her being commissioned in 1959. And she was the last World War II era designed aircraft carrier to leave service. As she in 1987 was sold to the Indians as INS Virat, and She stayed in service until 2016, far outliving you Americans. Yes, I know about Midway and serving to 82, but Hermes served until 2016, was supposed to become a museum ship, didn't become a museum ship, then some order was made to try and stop her scrapping, but by that point she was already 40% scrapped, and so really it couldn't really be affected, and so she was then properly just scrapped. But yeah, that was the longest lasting in service World War II era carrier. And it is World War II era by design, admittedly, because of how long she took to actually get into service. Like, she launched during the war, but... well, no, she was laid down during the war and stuff, so she is a wartime design. But, just with how bad our Royal Navy budget was, and how fast technology for aircraft carriers was going, yeah, it did take her a while to commission. Well, we already know the drill by this point. Yes, you're following, but you're following behind him. Yeah, and torpedo boats. Go. Avoid change off. And then avoid change off. Right. And the Dutchman is leading again because we put so much confidence in our ships that we have to put the captured enemy vessel in front. Yeah, it is interesting that she did see through pretty much all your conflicts during her service life. But whereas Hermes, her only claim to fame is she was our flagship at the Falklands. And I do not want to get into another rant on my opinions about the Falklands conflict, because things won't end well. Like, I will say, in terms of general how many aircraft you got on your ship and stuff, yes, Ranger was a better purpose-built carrier, but at least with our carriers, we weren't so scared that it was going to sink that we purposely kept it away from almost all forms of combat except for Atlantic Convoy and the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean was only after we had a foreign country pay us to fly Spitfires into a deserted... into a cut-off island, that the only way it was going to survive was if said country had paid you to fly those Spitfires in on your aircraft carrier. Ranger. Like, here's a funny thing. I'm sort of in the game Naval Art, I'm making up a lot of ships and stuff in sort of like a fictional mercenary group sort of thing that I come up with that the world goes mostly how it historically did, but all the navies had some form of help from an international mercenary group who, well, it's initially an international mercenary group who don't care what side they're helping, just as long as they get paid. Although they do end up eventually, from around like 1938-ish, they become more ally-orientated. Which I put it in the roleplay that the group was offered quite a bit of money from the British to not betray the British during what would become World War II. And that pretty much set the course of how that mercenary group ends up when they just eventually decide that hey, we got our own private island here that's been owned by us for over 200 years by this point. Sorry, no, over 100 years by this point. No, because I haven't really gone past modern day in that reality. But I sort of have it that the mercenary group in roughly the late 80s, early 90s, round about the time the Soviet Union is actually falling, they changed from a mercenary group to an actual sovereign nation sort of thing, and they're a NATO-based nation, which also in that reality, I actually gave quite an interesting story to one particular ship. One particular ship, which is a part of the very last class of battleship ever built in that reality. Yeah. Yeah, because I decided that I would have in that reality, the mercenary group still hold on to the battleship idea into the 1950s and actually complete a class of 4 battleships. I call them the Oblivion class. And for context, yes, they are named after Elder Scrolls related stuff, and I've also sort of context that the Elder Scrolls series of games is actually a book series in that reality. It's a whole complicated thing, okay? But I thought it through to avoid plot holes. But, and one particular member of the Dragonborn class, the Dragonborn, also known as Dorikin, because, yeah, that's how in the Dragon language of the Skyrim games, Dragonborn is pronounced in that language. I had Dragonborn be featured in almost every single armed conflict that a warship could get involved with post-World War II. Including the very latter part of Korea, and also as well, I kind of had it that briefly Dragonborn got trapped in the Suez Canal when that whole conflict sort of happened, and in that reality, the Oblivion class battleships in the end have 2 ships that stay into service into the 21st century. Dragonborn's one of them, and Dragonborn is sort of doing an around the world. My sort of roleplay of it is Dragonborn is doing an around the world farewell tour as she's about to be retired, and then the Russia-Ukrainian war starts just as Dragonborn so happens to be in the Black Sea in that reality. And the Russians decide to open fire on her and fail miserably to actually do any meaningful damage. But the mercenary group sort of inherited the Americans. You touched my boats! We're gonna kill you! And, that in that reality, Moskva sinks because she is hit from a little over 222 missiles from Dragonborn. Oh, and to end off, she does also get hit by all, I need to remind myself, all 20 18-inch guns that Dragonborn is equipped with. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention the Dragonborn class battleships have, five quad 18-inch guns as their main turrets. And the Oblivion class, sorry. And the Oblivions as well, they, actually end up... I honestly wouldn't know, as I don't know enough about modern warships, but yeah, the Dragonborn ends up sinking Moskva with 222 missiles and 20 18-inch shells. Although most of the missiles actually just hit water because Moskva in that reality was already sinking. Like, it would probably have already been sinking from the 18-inch shells, and that's what I've done in that reality. But I also sort of had it as well. Dragonborn's retiring. She's not going to need use of her missiles any longer, outside of probably that one small little revenge. Interesting question. They used tomahawks. Tomahawks and another set, because they had, like, harpoons, I think it is. No. I need to remind myself what bloody missiles the Dragonborns had. I think it was, I think Tomahawks are somewhere on there. Don't exactly quote me on that. You know, I'll open up Naval Art. I'll open up Naval Art, later on this stream. And I'll show you the ships. I'll show you the class. But I also did add a sort of unrealistic thing about the mercenary group, that they actually have a preference to try and preserve as many of their older ships as possible. Like, in their history, they have over 50% of all their retired ships are preserved in an inland lake that is connected by an elaborate canal and a very, very large aqueduct. that but also as well, it's done that some of those ships are actually saved just in case any new technology comes along that could actually bring them back into service as well, like to build it's the Oblivion class, but Dragonborn's like the famous member of the class. In terms of the lore I've built around the class. What design aspects? It does have British main and stern towers. Because I kind of have a love for the Queen Anne's Mansion, so I decided that we were going to Queen Anne's Mansion the ship when I built it. It has American-styled main guns. It had, in its original state, it had Des Moines guns mixed with 4.5-inch between deck mounts, but then they got very quickly converted out for twin 5-inch 54 mountings. In one of the refits the class had. But only two of the ships, Dragonborn and Cyrodiil, ever got those 5-inch 54 guns. I think it was... Hold on a second. I'm gonna go get my phone because that's got where I've written down all the lore for that ship. Hold on. Like, because I think I did 4 ships. Dragonborn, Cyrodiil... Yeah, Oblivion, Dragonborn, Cyrodiil, and Alduin, if I remember correctly. And then... Oh, log in. Was it 4? No. I think the original lot was 4. But then I, in my going back into history of the group and stuff, decided that 3 would actually be a more sensible number just because of how overpowered the ships are in the end. Oblivion class battleship. So, yeah, the original layout was the 20 18-inch guns. Oh, we got another small battle there. The original 20 18-inch guns, 12 8-inch guns in... I think it's 4 triple mounts. Yeah, it was 4 triple mounts. Then 24 4.5-inch BD guns. And then a whole host of 3-inch guns that I don't particularly remember the number of. And the ships, in lore, they have a 36 knot top speed on deep load trials because... the mercenaries, they wanted to know what their ships could do under combat conditions, and so they would fully load the ships with ammunition, all the stores and provisions for crew going out for normally like a 6-week deployment, something like that. I don't exactly remember how long I set like set deployment stuff for with them, but I'm still working out sort of like doctrinal stuff and that involvement with them, but I do know that their sea trials is always done on deep load trials. And yeah, I edited 3 ships: Oblivion, Dragonborn, and Cyrodiil. So they were actually all laid down in 1946. And Cyrodiil was the first to enter service in 1951. Dragonborn entered service last in 1953. So yeah, and they are full stop the last battleships that are ever built in that reality. I will add, in this reality, more battleships are actually built than historically done. And some historical designs from other nations did stay with the other nations and whatnot as well. I had to balance things out, you know, with the mercenary group being there and everything. Oh, okay. Dragonborn only missed the Korean War because Dragonborn commissioned a bit too late to see Korea, so poor Dragonborn on that front. But Oblivion and Cyrodiil were there, so the class has seen pretty much all actions, but that involved naval units, but only Oblivion and Cyrodiil actually were there. Dragonborn would be in the first Taiwan Strait crisis, the early part of the Vietnam War, got stuck in the Suez Canal during the Suez Crisis. They were planned to be refit in the 70s with missiles, but only Cyrodiil got this refit, and Cyrodiil getting the refit at the point she did seals Cyrodiil's fate eventually, and the other two getting delayed because they had to go and assist evacuating Vietnam. Pretty much saved the other 2 ships. If you'll see why when I get into the design on naval art later. Then the next real major event that I'm going to mention was the Falklands War, because historically, in the sort of history of the mercenary group, they're on a fictional island that's in the South Atlantic, relatively near the Falkland Islands, but not exactly, like, near there. And as such, Argentina tries to invade them. And what ends up happening in the end is they stop Argentina from doing the invasion, but in lore, another one of the ships that I have the mercenary group gets very, very badly damaged and ends up having to be retired from service because of it. And a couple of the destroyers sink as well. Like, I'm still working out the Falklands era stuff, okay? But then, after the Falklands War, in roughly 89, 90-ish, sort of at the same time the Iowas are being refit for missiles, Oblivion and Dragonborn would then get their refit, which it's their 1980s refit that gives them the 5-inch 54 secondary guns, and they also as well gain, I think it was like 300 something VLSs of mixed type. But then Cyrodiil, because she was given a refit in the 70s with a lot older technology. She was seen as too expensive to really continue having in service, and so she was downgraded to a training ship and then scrapped in 2001 in that reality. And then the last... Then the two ships got involved, the two surviving ships, Bolivian and Dragonborn, got involved in the Gulf War. It's roughly during the time of... Yeah, it's like the 90s, sort of, when the mercenary group becomes an actual nation. And, then, essentially, at the end of their careers, the Oblivions are used as giant anti-piracy boats off Somalia. That is until then, the aforementioned, both ships were getting retired in 2022, and Dragonborn was in Ukraine doing, like, some goodwill visit sort of thing on a farewell tour, whatever, and, got hit by a missile. And, yeah, then sank the Moskva. And then, I forgot to mention this as well, she almost started a war with Turkey. She almost started a war between the mercenary group and Turkey by forcing her way through the Bosphorus Strait whilst threatening every single Turkish ship that tried to stop them with suffering the same fate as Moskva. Even if they couldn't actually suffer the same fate as Moskva because they used the majority of their surface-to-surface missiles sinking Moskva, but that's a whole thing that they never told anyone about. But in the end, Dragonborn is sent to the Naval Museum that I mentioned. Whereas Dragonborn, because she was in a better material state, because she didn't just get hit by a missile and go all temper on Moskva, Bosphorus can be blocked by warships, because legally, warships aren't allowed through over a certain tonnage anyway, but they're especially not allowed through during wartime, and, well, the whole Russia-Ukrainian thing was going on. It's still annoying. It still unfortunately goes on in my reality, but my reality, I didn't really want to change what wars did happen, so for just simplicity of I don't have to make more adjustments and political research and stuff, so yeah, you probably see why I just was like, I'm going to not I'm going to not change what conflicts happen, but Dragonborn gets sent to the museum and stays as a museum. Oblivion, however, is sent to a completely different place as reserve fleet, and then she isn't maintained well once she goes into reserve fleet, and as of sort of the time I've gotten up to with the fates of my ship so far, she is settled to the bottom of the harbour that she's in with only her superstructure and her superimposed turrets above the water. It's a whole complicated story that, like, everything's complicated about how the mercenary group came to be and whatnot and everything, and I'm still again working out all like the kinks and stuff, like probably once I've gotten to a point like, yeah, I've done pretty much all the ships that I'm feasibly going to have for the group, that's probably when I'd have the best chance to actually go and do it. Yeah, they let Oblivion sink. They let Oblivion sink, but they kept the famous one alive. That's essentially how it is in that reality with those ships. I do want to go do another invasion there, but I gotta stop that invasion from going through, though. That's the big problem. I'm gonna do one last battleship design. I'm gonna do a battleship design for this episode because we need a bit of ship design to break up the combat. Then I'll show you the naval art ships. I'll show you the ships, and I'll go through the histories of the ones that I remember the histories of. That isn't the Oblivion class, because I already gave you the Oblivion class history. So this, you're going to be using the 32cm gun that I had on my other ship, so there you go. And for secondary guns, you are going to have the 15.5cm guns there on you in twin turrets, then supplemented by 7.9-inch guns in the upper mountings here. Okay, now this is where my inch is to... I want a 14-inch belt, which is 30, roughly 35.5 centimeters, but I'm going to go 36 because I like the whole numbers. Then 11 centimeters for fore and aft belts, which then also means as well it's an 11 centimeter conning tower. No, conning tower is an 8-inch, so, or roughly 22 centimeters, sorry. 20 centimeters then. So then 2 inches, roughly 5. Oh yeah, I always do it 5.5 centimeters, so 5.5 centimeters or 55 millimeters, I think it is. And then 36, 5.5, 36, and then 5.5 on this. Yes, we're running centimeters here, mostly because, yeah. Oh, there is another ship I have in the mercenary group that technically became the first 18-inch armed super battleship. A bit of context with that. It was a ship that the mercenary group had decided to get entirely international help with in terms of like gathering of all materials for the ship and stuff, and they asked Japan for the main guns. More specifically, they asked Japan for the 16-inch guns that they were testing out that that were going to go to Yamato. Well, for context, the Japanese claimed that Yamato's guns were 16-inch guns when they initially started developing the gun, and Japan reluctantly agreed to help try and hide the secret that they were in fact using 18-inch guns for Yamato. And they failed to hide it from the mercenary group, but the mercenary group, this is before World War II kicked off, and they had the bribery from the British to not betray the British. So the mercenary group didn't tell anyone about Yamato and Yamato's guns. And by the time it actually felt important to tell anyone about Yamato or Yamato's guns, Yamato was already known to the entire world by that point because Musashi was sunk, and Yamato herself had just really come out of the Battle of Samar. And during that time of me explaining the history, the background of one of my ship's interesting quirks, we've built the next battleship. Okay. So, YouTube viewers, if I remember correctly, you are about to be cut out entirely from the rest of what's going on here. So this is to YouTube viewers when this goes up on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you all again. Silent service going silent situation. For you there on Twitch, we are about to go to Naval Art. So, if I remember correctly, actually, Oblivion's the last ship I had selected on Naval Art, so it should be easy getting you Oblivion up. Or should I go into gallery mode and show you from gallery mode? I think gallery mode might be the easier way to do it. Because then in gallery mode I'm not spending 10 trillion years waiting for a loading screen each time I want to get a new ship out. Here's the thing, I need to remember though, if I kept the refit version of Cyrodiil or not, because I was working on it, but I then took priority into what the actual refits to the mainline Oblivion class would be. So okay. Gallery. Alright, are you picking up OBS? Are you picking up Naval Art now? You're not picking up Naval Art. Capture specific window. Naval Art. Oh yeah, Arctic Wolf. That's got... There we go. Now it's picked up. Okay, so you wanted to see the Naval Art ships. So I'm just going to place them down and sort of then go through them. So here we have the Emerald Knight. Now, Emerald Knight is a bit of an interesting ship. So, post World War One, the mercenary group had no light cruisers that were feasible for modern combat, I will add. They did still have the original set of protected cruisers that they purchased when they first became a mercenary group, but they had no proper light cruisers. And so they asked the British to go, build more E-class light cruisers that the mercenary group would pay for, and they became the Knight-class cruisers that then got refitted into anti-aircraft roles in America just before World War II. But Emerald Knight here was a late addition to the class of ships that the Emerald Knights were, as Emerald Knight is actually HMS Emerald in the reality that I set this all in. And so Emerald was then sent to the Americans. The Americans decided that they would screw the anti-aircraft refit and experiment with quad 6-inch guns, and somehow made it work. And Emerald Knight came out in the quad 6-inch guns, whereas her sister ships, if I can pull out one of her sister ships, I'll pull out the Black Knight. Her sister ships for World War II got either this refit style. Yes, there's a refit and then there's modification refits, because Dark Knight's also a mod one, so God, where's oh, I do not want to pull out the Hallowells right now, nor do I want to pull out the medics. Oh, there's the Oblivions. I'll pull them out in a bit. Come on. And then most of the Knight class ships ended up in this layout for World War II. Essentially, twin 5-inch 38 mounted guns in ABQX, in sort of Fletcher layout. Yeah, the sort of main hull colour is a purplish sort of colour for the mercenary group, but these were sort of like the oldest light cruisers in service with the mercenary group during the World War II era period. This thing, the motor vessel Fox, is essentially the repair. It's essentially the generalized repair ship design that the mercenary group use for modern day. Right, other one of their other ships of theirs. Oh, we have the Venturers. The Venturers are a bit of an interesting design because essentially we purchased the Hawkins. The mercenary group purchased the Hawkins very early into World War II and converted them along the lines of Mod 1 Emerald, the Mod 1 Knight class, sorry, and the C class into anti-aircraft cruisers. Like, we purchased Hawkins, and I don't know if they purchased any of the other ones. I'm forgetting the lore behind that. Okay, next on our list is one of many battle cruisers, I will admit, that the mercenary group have. If it will load. Come on. Come on. Launcher! I've not tried this on stream yet. And here we have HFS, sorry. Yeah, the prefix is HFS. Essentially, it's a combination of the initials of the three founding drunk 21-year-olds who founded the mercenary group originally. Teardrop here is an experimental battle cruiser that was built in the mid-30s, 18-inch guns, although they're modelled as more modern-looking turrets, they are actually more upscaled hood turrets is what they should look like, but the game doesn't. I haven't found any sort of mod that models it. Then we have basically the only attempt of the mercenary group to follow any form of Washington Naval Treaty compliancy. It's essentially a Brooklyn hull, French guns, the British 4-inch secondary guns, and a whole bunch of Bofors. Yeah. Oh, and Grashby torpedoes on the stern. This thing I haven't come up with the lore for yet, but I will be at some point. Then we have the Mercenary Group's first ever Dreadnoughts. HFS Spider, which, Spider is one of those cases of laid down before Dreadnoughts, but launched and commissioned after Dreadnought. And Spider here is equipped with 11-inch guns, so yeah, Spider is essentially Spider is in the roleplay. She is the first Dreadnought counter, and in the end, the Mercenary Group don't refit her at all because they think she's going to stay on second line roles entirely. She's used for convoy escort during World War II and gets sunk by a U-boat. That's the history of Spider. Although there was a proposal for a 1930s rebuild, the proposal never went ahead. The proposal essentially gave the ship a whole host of 4.5-inch guns, and then some Bofors guns for the sacrifice of one turret. Oh, and more funnels and more speed. I need to remind myself what this ship is, because some of these ships are in incomplete states. I will warn you. Oh, this is the Spare. Spare is essentially a destroyer that received all the old 6-inch guns that was originally on, oh god, if I can go back to them, that was originally on the Emerald Knights here, sorry, the Knight class. I keep calling them Emerald Knights because, Emerald Knight here, originally HMS Emerald was the ship that sort of made the class, but, that's where all the 6-inch guns went, to, one tiny little destroyer boat that, it goes about as well as you expect. The destroyer ended up, breaking herself to pieces when she first fired her guns at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and sank with the loss of all hands. Then we have one of the later battleships of the Mercenary Group. She's under the temporary name of Soundcraft, but I'm very much planning on changing that name. Soundcraft is essentially a more armoured, slower Spider over here with the 18-inch guns, twin 18s, and then we have the Skyrim class. The Skyrim class, I only have the modernised version here. It went very Renown-esque in the modernisation, but essentially Skyrim is a British battlecruiser hull with American main guns, and then British secondary guns that were added on later in her service career. She originally was like casement-mounted 6-inch guns or something like that. But I am not bothered to go and do her pre-rebuild. She broke in half because this one broke in half because she was built like an actual destroyer, so lightly and everything. But they never planned for 6-inch guns to be put on to her when the hull was being built. The 6-inch guns were just, oh, we got these laying around, we'll put them on instead of the guns we planned for the ship situation, and it blew her in two. Then we have one of the ships I've done a lot into the origin story of, but I haven't done their actual service life. If it will load, I will show you the HFS Professional. If it will load. If it's this bad already, it's going to be bad when I get to the Oblivions, which are next. Professional here, if you can't tell, was a German ship. It's essentially a World War I German hull that, right at the very end of World War II, just as the armistice was being signed, the Germans sold the hull to the mercenary group under the pretext of that the mercenary group would then return the hull when the Weimar Constitution had fully gotten itself set up, and the Weimar Constitution would have 2 relatively powerful battleships in their fleet. Well, the mercenary group went back on their word unless they were paid a whole host of money that they'd get both ships back, and the Germans decided that they would only pay for one of the battleships to come back to Germany, and hence Professional ended up being kept in the mercenary group. And this is her after a rebuild. So next up, I'm going to move a little bit over here because this is going to be the fun one. The Oblivion class ships. Okay. Problem. The forward superstructure didn't load. Nor did the paint job. Okay. Let's see if the 1960 variant, what I titled the 1960 variant, although it probably isn't the 1960 variant. Definitely isn't the I designed these all, then made up the lore, and then was like, some parts of the lore actually make sense doing this and this. Oh, come on. Load, please! Thank you, I didn't have to do a pray and dance to the machine spirit. So, yeah. This is Oblivion in her original layout. You see what I mean now by the quad 18-inch guns. She has 5 turrets, 20 guns total. BD mounts there, whole bunch of 3-inch mounts, 8-inch Des Moines mount, BD gun, Q turret, BD mounts there, more 3-inch and some Orlicans, another 8-inch mount. Yeah, and Oblivion's a bit of a beast. Now, this is that's loading, is the Oblivion class after the refit. Why the split funnels? The split funnels is because Oblivion had separated engine rooms underneath the hull. Like, she had a forwardmost engine room, which is from pretty much a few meters from the rear of the forward magazine for B turret. Well, part of it extends to underneath that magazine. I will openly admit that now. Up until the first up until the part of Queen Anne's mansion, then a deck below that. Right up until just halfway down the deck below the magazine for the Q turret is a second engine room, and then at the stern, by like the secondary tower areas, a third engine room. Bollocks. We got too many ships here. But then Oblivion, the Oblivion class, most of the Oblivion class, after their sort of refit. You know what? I'm gonna go to a view where we clear out all the other ships. Why you may be thinking that? Maybe because they, in the end up actually almost completing one? Almost completing one, but then they see sense and it becomes a full deck carrier. And it's not like a modern day one like Issei or like the Kearsarge design or whatnot. It's a more... It's a more, what's the word? It's a more just post-World War II era. They thought, aircraft carriers are becoming a thing. Let's try and make a battleship carrier. They then decided to make it a full-deck carrier. Did so, launched it, but then a hurricane went unusually too far south. They went unusually too far south and hit the fictional island that the fictional mercenary group are based on. And the ship sank before it got commissioned. It sank on builder's trial. And what in the end happened was the mercenary group then didn't touch aircraft carriers with a 6-foot pole until just before World War II, when they saw an opportunity in a wrecked cargo ship to build the aircraft carrier Cunard. And then they saw opportunity in HMS Ranger. Okay, so this is the tour you're going to get of the Oblivions. So, you know, I'll do it in dock mode for the rest of the ships because I don't really have much time. So I'll just do it that way. Then the lag-induced way of trying to get them all into one place. Sorry about this. But, yeah. The mercenary group then eventually did get carriers, and their carriers actually did more than they should have theoretically have done. But then, Cunard got lost. Cunard got lost during the war, and, Courier, I think, is what I renamed Ranger to. Courier got badly damaged during the end of the war, that she was uneconomical to repair as staying as a warship, but some ocean liner company thought that it'd be a great idea to convert her into an ocean liner, and she got converted into an ocean liner. So, yeah, this is Oblivion in her refit state. You could see what I mean by they got changed out for 5-inch 54 guns. And then there are your harpoon launchers. Harpoon launchers, you got phalanx, close-in weapon systems. You got more phalanx there. You've got more 5-inch 54s there. I've noticed with the design actually trialing it out in-game, I should put more close-in weapon systems on board, but that's a problem for me to fix next time. And still kept the 18-inch guns. There's another set of the 54s. And then just on the stern here, you have an entire platform of VLS launchers. Maybe. Now, I forgot exactly how many VLS launchers are here, but it's a lot, okay? It's a lot. Yeah, it did replace all, like, the 3-inch guns that were down here and stuff, and this extra platform bit did take a bit of time to build on in terms of actual reworkings of the ship, but how it would have actually been done in the realistically done, like the role-playing stuff, but yeah, this is what Oblivion and Dragonborn ended up like. And yeah. These are like, the Oblivions are like my masterpiece of ships. And that one isn't a part of the thing. That one's something completely different. Okay. I do have what Cyrodiil's refit was, but it's titled under a different name because it was done during the time where I thought that the Oblivion class were going to be 4 ships, and then I retconned that fact. So, you're now looking at a ship that got retconned out of existence. But, yeah, this is the 1970s rebuild the Oblivions received. Well, only one Oblivion, Cyrodiil, received. And, yeah, this refit didn't really do good for Cyrodiil in terms of her survival post-1990 something. As then Cyrodiil was made a training ship and then scrapped. The Phalanx is... I'm gonna have to find an excuse as to why they're there now, aren't I? The Phalanxes, they were added later in the career in that refit. Oh, don't get me wrong, they were originally in the Oblivion design when they were testing. The concussion from the guns actually did mess with the VLS tubes, but because it was under testing conditions, and the fact that they didn't want their ships to blow up in testing conditions, they put missiles in, but they put some sort of like clayey material in place of like the warheads and stuff to act as the weight of the missiles in there, so the missiles didn't actually explode. And I'm saying for Cyrodiil had specially made variants of these missile launchers to sustain the concussion of the 18-inch guns. So that's the Oblivion class. I've already shown you the Knights. Yeah, Courier is what I named, Ranger. The designation for aircraft carriers in the mercenary group is ACV, or Aircraft Carrying Vessel. Cunard was their first carrier. If I pull out Cunard for a second, Cunard here, yeah, was a cargo ship that ran aground and was going to be scrapped, but then the mercenary group thought, oh hey, we could make this an aircraft carrier. And by how haphazardly everything is put, this thing was done very quickly because it was needed very quickly for, well, testing purposes so then they could build a proper carrier. Yes, it is an ugly ship, Cunard. They went for more, let's get this ship out there now, than, oh hey, let's take time to actually aesthetically make it look good. But yeah, Cunard ends up actually fighting in the Pacific, believe it or not, with how horrid she is as a ship, and almost survives the war. Just the Japanese actually hit her with a kamikaze one time and ended her existence before the war's end. And I've also done it as well that she's the last Allied warship lost in World War II in the reality that the mercenary group is in. It's an incomplete carrier because I still have a couple of minor things to fix on it. Like, I need to change out the 3-inch layout because I dislike the 3-inch layout, and so I want to change that up. But that'd be HFS Cyan ACV-8. ACV-8 is the first carrier that the mercenary group got that was purposely built for them, and not a conversion or a ship that they purchased off another nation. It is a very heavily Essex-based ship, mostly because the mercenary group already own 2 Essexes. ACV-6 and ACV-7 is what Bunker Hill and Franklin ended up in this reality as. And so, they use the Essex as a base for this ship. This ship, the Cyan, and then angled flight decks were becoming a thing when they had actually got the Cyan in construction, and so, sort of like Hermes, they had Cyan be fitted with an angled flight deck during construction. And there is a small heli deck on the back here as well that is essentially just a circle and an H painted on top, in actuality, but I have to use an actual part in game because boo, hiss, the game is like that. A helicopter usually isn't there when flight operations for landings are occurring. I don't particularly have a plan yet to start making full-on supercarriers yet, but then if I find like one that I think is decent enough to base off, then yeah, I probably will do like a supercarrier-esque ship from like this nation here. No, those 2 set of 3-inch guns are going, and yeah, I'm gonna put some Bofors back on there. You're seeing you're seeing very quick annotations being done in real time. Congrats. I know I could just select Sweden, but it's more chopping out if I have to go and select Sweden. Oh wait, no, hold on. I do have Bofors guns here just as already. There you go. Bofors guns there, and yeah, there was one on top of there, so yeah, on top of there. Now, the nation, the mercenary group do have a bit of a history with Bofors guns. Mostly because since the first Dreadnought, they've had sort of a tech agreement with Bofors in general. So you'll find a lot of my sort of interwar period ships get 40mm Bofors guns earlier than others, like his ships historically did. That's why. Oh, that's one that's in the works. Oh yeah, there was a Dragonborn before the one that became Dragonborn. I'm still working on it, but that Dragonborn ended up what's the best term to say it? Ended up being used on a suicide mission to try essentially, this is the Draco, by the way. It's one of the other in the works battleships. It's essentially the first major super dreadnought that the mercenary group gets. I'm again still working on it. The original Dragonborn got expended in the whole mess that was early World War II. Early Pacific World War II, sorry, as the ship didn't sail with Prince of Wales and Repulse when they were both sunk. They still both get sunk in this reality. But was at the Battle of the Java Sea, which, in theory, being a battleship, should have made the Battle of the Java Sea more of a victory for the Allies, but it got sunk at the Battle of Java Sea. In place of De Ruyter. De Ruyter, and I sort of have a bit of a history of De Ruyter in this reality, that De Ruyter survives and, well, eventually also becomes a ship of the... Once she's done with her Dutch service, she joins the mercenary group, but that's a whole another thing. But this is the Electric Eye. Electric Eye is a warship that was designed but never built for the mercenary group. That was the London Naval Treaty was being negotiated at the time. The mercenary group had dodged Washington because they're not a sovereign nation, but the British were trying to add in a clause for all mercenary groups also have to follow the London Treaty. That never went through. I'll mention that right now. That never happened. The mercenary group, in the end, never had any treaty restrictions upon them. That's kind of how they get some of their insane ships, is that they never had Washington. This is the most recent ship that's actually had any meaningful progress done to it. HFS Falklands, which is a heavy cruiser with a bloody great seaplane on the back. For context, yes, the mercenary group did use scout planes, but they had a preference to large seaplanes like the HK-8 here that I've used as the example plane, than to smaller ones. Oh, the torpedoes that are on board this ship as well are a custom set of torpedoes for the game that I had a friend specifically made for me. But also as well, I'm saying that those torpedoes as well in the roleplay are torpedoes that were home developed by the mercenary group. And if you think the long lances were overpowered torpedoes like, one of the best torpedoes in existence. This thing goes triple the range of a long lance. Triple the range. I think it's something like a 28-inch warhead. Yeah, 28-inch torpedo with like triple the range of a long lance. You're seeing me go through the painting of this ship now. Like, I should be showing more of the ships, but I'm just now doing touch-up maintenance on the ones that need the touch-up maintenance. Oh, I should mention, some of the ships have, like, this random red shear line sort of area at the front. The ships with that red bit have, at some point in their career, been used as flagships. Like, that's what I've done that particular thing to signify, that the ship has been a flagship at some point in its career. Like, again, I've done a lot of work into this. A lot more than I probably should have done, but like, this thing, the Falklands class is sort of like the, it's called Falklands because in the mercenary group's history, their first ever sort of mission that they had was in the 1880s when they were formed. They had pretty much made a contract with the Royal Navy to defend the Falkland Islands, and it's essentially in honor of that original operation when they were still starting out, and part payment for that operation was a Dreadnought battleship that I'm not actually going to go through with the actual construction for, because I don't really like building Dreadnoughts in this game. Or let's say I can't do a balanced Dreadnought. I usually do overpowered Dreadnoughts. So, but they end up getting their first battleship out the deal, and so yeah, Falklands is named after that sort of first bunch of work the mercenary group got. But yeah, these, like I said, these torpedo tubes, they're in lore a custom built set for the mercenary group, and they were actually for game custom built for me. So OP, if you ever watch this, thank you again. But yeah, Falklands here as well. She's essentially the definition of the B-52. She's like the B-52 of the mercenary group. She's a pre-World War II. She's an interwar built ship that in the latest time I've gotten to in the sorting out of the mercenary group's history, she is still in active service and has literally come out of a very fresh refit to make her better in almost every single way. Again. But I've only, as of now, gotten 2 variants of the Falklands done. I've got the original variant here, which stayed until the end of World War II. And then I have I have the variant that she was refitted into in 1951 because the mercenary group got their hands on Des Moines guns, as is evident from the fact that well, evident from the fact that they were on the Oblivions, but yeah, in the 50s they got refit with newer 8-inch guns. The forward turrets was reduced to only one triple, and then at the stern now it is 2 twin 8-inch guns, all auto loading, all like the same caliber and stuff, and a whole bunch of Swedish 57mm guns. The torpedoes stayed during the 1950s refit, and again, the Falklands is like the B-52. It's literally staying in service, like, sort of mercenary group wise, it's planned to stay in service longer than anyone's lifespans left in the world, in that reality, that are currently alive at the point of the reality I've gotten to. Like, yeah, the Falklands is a really old ship in that reality, and somehow still going. So, Electric Eye Falklands, that is a ship that got retconned, so I'm not going to show you it. There's this. This thing was a very, very quick build that I did just because I really wanted to see if I could probably build a modern-ish ship. Yeah, it's horrid. It's horrid. It's got this weird 2-bridge system to it for some reason. It's got twin 8-inch guns, and then it's got this thing is horrid. This thing is horrid and annoyingly canonically accurate in the reality. This makes what's its name? This makes the Long Beach look good, and we already had the argument over that. I don't want that argument again. We'll just leave it at it makes that ship look good. Now, we are going to the first ship I ever built for the mercenary group. Or ever did anything with for the mercenary group. I'm not kidding. I started with what was a class of light cruisers that they originally ordered from the Americans, but then World War II started, the Americans were like, we're not giving anyone our 5-inch 38 guns, and so it's an Atlanta with 4.5-inch between deck mount guns. Oh, and a set of sextuple Bofors mounts. And Bofors mounts in place of the wing turret and torpedoes. This thing is literally covered in Bofors, okay? And the Hallowell class of ships is what, as I've named them, the Hallowells, were a 11-ship strong class. But they took very heavy losses during World War II, and only 2 of them survived the war. Hallowell herself, although Japan did try and take her out many times, but they failed. But so yeah, Hallowell herself survived, and then the other one was Mercury, HFS Mercury, which Mercury I decided to have Mercury in the game as what the ships were refitted to during their later years of life. So they still have 4.5-inch guns, but it's now reduced to 4. And they're daring guns now. There's 3-inch guns for the anti-aircraft. There's a set of Sea Whiz and there's harpoons. But Hallowell ends up going like the rest of her sisters and sinking. Although Hallowell didn't sink in combat, Hallowell sunk. If I remember correctly, she hit an iceberg and sank, and her wreck fell on top of Titanic's. That's if I'm remembering the fate correctly. Then we have the destroyers. Now, I haven't really done much for destroyers yet, outside of the one with the 6-inch guns that blasts the ship to pieces. The most numerous class of destroyers the mercenary group have is this thing, the medic class, which is essentially similar to a gearing, but with 4.5-inch BD mounts and the home-developed custom torpedoes as the main set of torpedoes. Also, as well, medics were domestically produced, and they were the first domestically produced warships of the mercenary group. With then the Oblivions, if I remember correctly, were among the first domestically produced as well. And then sort of like the last traditional battleship that the mercenaries had. This is the last ship I will show before I have to then shut off. The last traditional warship they had is this thing, Memento Mortem. It's essentially Montana with Nelson guns and daring secondaries. Memento Mortem was built as essentially part of America's payment to the mercenary group for the mercenary group's help during World War II. And I haven't really sorted out the history other than that for Memento Mortem. Like, I know she commissions just as World War II ends. Oh wait, there's one final ship. One final ship that I want to show. I could maybe try my hand at a better attempt at a modern destroyer. The one final ship I want to show is Northway. Now, Northway may look very, very, very familiar. It is very familiar, as Northway is renowned. Because, yeah, my love for renown started to come along, and then I was like, well, I'm going to have one of the British capital ships I think that should have been saved join the mercenary group, and I thought Renown would be the better option, as Renown was in a better material condition than Warspite, and also is faster and speed is king. So yeah, they had Northway, which was Renown that then got given to the mercenary group. It was still in service, although heavily refitted to more missile era standards. Like, it had sort of like box launcher things like the Iowas and sort of stuff on the upper levels of the superstructure around the funnels. Essentially think for Northway missile refit, Iowa refit, but with a British-looking superstructure instead. But Northway also got involved in the Falklands conflict, and Northway's the ship I mentioned when I mentioned the mercenary group's involvement in the Falklands. That's the ship the Argentinians very damaged to out of service-ness, and Northway got retired. She was sent off to where the museum fleet was kept, and eventually, with a lot of money, was restored to World War II condition as a museum ship. Eventually. But I guess that's like the history of the mercenary stuff that you wanted. I'm going to end this stream here now, and go do other stuff. Have a nice rest of your days.